You won't believe where Chinny got her human hairs from. The three women lay on dirty mattresses in the dark room. Their wrists were chained to metal pipes. Cloth gags covered their mouths. Their hair had grown down to their feet in just 2 weeks. It spread across the floor like black rivers. Their bodies had become thin and weak. Their eyes were sunken and afraid. This was what Chinny saw every morning when she came to harvest their hair. But it had not always been this way. Few months earlier, Chinny had been struggling in Abuja. She owned a small shop called Chinny's Hair Palace in Wuse Market. She sold synthetic hair and cheap blends. Every day she watched the big girls drive past in their Range Rovers and G-Wagons. They wore Brazilian hair and Peruvian weaves that cost more than her monthly rent. They shopped at expensive stores and took pictures for Instagram. Chinny wanted that life badly. She was tired of counting naira notes and begging customers to buy. She was tired of living in a small room in Kubwa. She was tired of being nobody. Human hair was the answer. Real human hair. The rich women in Abuja paid anything for quality human hair, but getting it was the problem. The suppliers charged too much. The market was controlled by big importers who had connections. Chinny had tried everything, but she could not break through. Then she remembered the stories from her village. Stories about the powerful native doctors in Anambra State. Her mother had always said that when life became too hard, the old ways could help. So Chinny packed a bag and took a bus to her village in Auka. Her mother was surprised to see her. After Chinny explained her problem, her mother became quiet. Then she said she knew someone who could help. The next morning, they walked deep into the forest, to a compound hidden by thick trees. The native doctor was an old woman with grey hair and sharp eyes. She listened to Chinny's request. The woman disappeared into her shrine and came back with a small calabash filled with black liquid that smelled like bitter herbs. She also brought out a larger calabash decorated with cowrie shells and red cloth. The old woman's voice was serious when she explained, if anyone drank the black liquid, their hair would grow faster than anything in nature. It would grow thick and strong and never stop growing. Chinny would have unlimited supply, but there was a price. A serious price. The condition was simple and clear. Chinny could never have anything to do with a man. No boyfriend, no husband, no sleeping with men, not even once. If she broke this rule, the power would begin to fade. The large calabash must stay in her room always. It kept the charm alive. If the calabash broke, everything would end. Chinny did not hesitate. She did not care about men or marriage. She only wanted money and the big girl lifestyle. She could live without love if it meant living in luxury. The native doctor warned her that this was not ordinary medicine. It was power from the other side. Once she took it, she could not just give it back. These things had consequences. But Chinny was not listening anymore. She was already imagining her new life. She told herself she would only do this for a few months, just enough to build capital and establish her business properly. Then she would stop. She took both calabashes and paid the native doctor well. As she left the shrine, she did not see the sad look in the old woman's eyes. Back in Abuja, Chinny made her plan to get human hair by all means. She needed foreigners with long silky hair. After researching online, she chose Vietnam. The country had poor villages where people were desperate for work. She sold her small car and some jewelry. She used the money to get a visa and buy a plane ticket. Vietnam was hot and crowded. Chinny hired a local man named Min who spoke English. She paid him well to help her find women. They went to rural villages where people lived in small houses with tin roofs. Chinny told the women she met that she owned a big hair factory in Nigeria. She said she needed workers. She promised them $300 every month plus free housing and food. In these villages, people earned less than $50 a month. The offer sounded like a miracle. Many were suspicious, but Chinny was patient. She showed them fake documents and pictures of nice buildings she claimed were hers. She talked about how Nigeria was booming and how they could send money home to their families. After 2 weeks, she found 3 women who agreed. Their names were Lan, Huang, and Mai. They were all in their 20s. They were all desperate to escape poverty. Chinny arranged their travel documents. She told immigration they were coming as tourists. She paid extra money to make sure there were no problems. When they arrived in Lagos, she drove them straight to a house she had rented in a remote area outside Abuja. The house was surrounded by tall fences and had no neighbors nearby. The women were tired from the journey. Chinny gave them food and showed them their room. Then she brought out small bottles of the black liquid. She said it was medicine for malaria prevention. She said Nigerian mosquitoes were very dangerous and this would protect them. The women trusted her. They drank the liquid without question. 2 days later, the changes began. The women woke up and their hair had grown several inches. By the third day, their hair was touching their shoulders, even though they had all cut it short before traveling. By the end of the first week, their hair reached their waists. The women were amazed and frightened. But with the hair growth came pain. Their heads ached constantly. The pain was sharp and never stopped. They became dizzy and weak. They stopped eating much. Chinny told them it was just their bodies adjusting to Nigeria. She said it would pass soon, but it did not pass. The headaches got worse. The women began to cry. They said they wanted to go home. Chinny refused. She said they had signed contracts. She said they owed her money for the flight. The women became angry. They tried to leave. That night, Chinny put sleeping pills in their food. When they woke up the next morning, they were chained. Their mouths were gagged. They could not scream. They could not run. Every 3 days, Chinny came with scissors. She cut their hair close to their scalps. The hair filled large bags. Within hours of cutting, the hair grew back. It was an endless supply. Chinny took the hair to a contact who processed it. At first, she shipped everything to China, where factories could treat it and make it into weaves and wigs. The money started flowing like water. Chinny's hair was the best quality and very affordable in Abuja. Women fought to buy from her. Her shop expanded. She hired staff. Within 3 months, she had enough money to build her own processing factory in Nigeria. She bought the white Range Rover she had always dreamed of. She moved to a luxury apartment in Maitama. She wore designer clothes and jewelry. But the few months she planned turned into 6 months. The money was too sweet. Chinny became greedy. She told herself she would stop soon, but she never did. She kept harvesting. She kept selling. The calabash sat in her bedroom, hidden in her closet. The three women became thinner and weaker, but their hair kept growing. Blessing had worked as Chinny's assistant for 4 months. She was smart and observant. She noticed strange things. Chinny said she traveled to source hair, but Blessing never saw import documents. Yet, every week, there were fresh bags of identical hair. It did not make sense. Blessing started watching her boss carefully. Then one Saturday night, everything changed. One of the big girls Chinny now called friend invited her to a party at a club in Asokoro. Chinny went wearing her best dress and expensive shoes. She drank champagne and vodka. She drank more than she should have. The music was loud and the lights were bright, and she felt like she had finally arrived. A man approached her at the bar. He was handsome and well-dressed. He bought her drinks. They danced. Chinny was so drunk she forgot everything. She forgot the condition. She forgot the calabash. She forgot the warning. That night, she went home with the man. She broke the one rule she was supposed to keep. When she woke up the next morning, the man was gone. Reality hit her like cold water. What had she done? She rushed to check on the women in the hidden house. Their hair was still growing, but something was different. It was not growing as fast as before. By the next harvest, she noticed the hair was thinner. Each day it grew slower and slower. Panic set in. Chinny knew she had destroyed everything. She needed to go back to the village. She needed to see the native doctor and beg for help. She started making plans to travel home. But she did not know that Blessing was already closing in on her secrets. Blessing had followed Chinny to the hidden compound twice now. She had seen enough through the fence to know something terrible was happening. The muffled sounds, the bags of hair, the way Chinny looked around nervously before entering. Blessing could not sleep at night thinking about it. She made a decision. She went to the police and told them everything she suspected. At first, they did not believe her. But Blessing was persistent. She gave them the address. She begged them to investigate. Finally, they agreed to check. The raid happened early one morning. Police broke down the gate of the compound while Chinny was at home preparing for her trip to the village. They found the three women chained and gagged. The women were like skeletons with skin. Their hair covered the entire floor of the room. Their eyes were hollow and empty. The police officers had never seen anything like it. They rushed the women to the hospital immediately. Then they went to arrest Chinny. They found her at her apartment packing a bag. When they brought her to the station, she stayed quiet. At the hospital, doctors examined the three women. They gave them IV fluids. They gave them medicine for pain. They ran tests, but nothing worked. The women's headaches continued. Their bodies remained weak. The hair kept growing even though it was slower now. The doctors were confused. They said it was like the women were under some kind of curse. Nothing medical could explain it. The police questioned Chinny for hours. Chinny broke down. She confessed everything. The native doctor, the charm, the calabash in her room. She told them the only way to free the women was to break the calabash, but she refused to do it. If she broke it, she would lose everything. All her money would be meaningless. All her plans would collapse. The police took her back to her apartment with armed escorts. They asked her where the calabash was. Chinny pointed to her bedroom closet but would not move. She stood there shaking her head. She could not do it. Even now, even after everything, she could not let go of the power. One of the officers lost his patience. He slapped her hard across the face. Another officer pushed her against the wall. They were angry. They had seen what she did to those women. They had seen how she kept them like animals. The beating was not official. It was not in any report. But it happened. They hit her until she fell to the floor crying and begging them to stop. "Get up and break it," they told her. "Break it now or we will beat you until you cannot stand." Chinny crawled to the closet. Her face was swollen. Her lip was bleeding. She pulled out the calabash decorated with cowrie shells and red cloth. Her hands trembled as she held it. This was her wealth. This was her power. This was everything she wanted. But she had no choice now. She lifted the calabash high and smashed it on the floor. It shattered into pieces. The black liquid inside spilled out and soaked into the carpet. The smell of bitter herbs filled the room. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Chinny felt something leave her body. It was like a heavy weight lifting off her chest. She knew the power was gone. At the hospital, the three women slowly started responding to treatment. Chinny was charged with human trafficking, kidnapping, and assault. The evidence was overwhelming. The three women testified against her even though they could barely speak English. The translator helped them tell their story. The judge showed no mercy. Chinny was sentenced to 25 years in prison. In prison, Chinny had a lot of time to think. She thought about the native doctor's warning. Once you take power from the devil, you cannot give it back easily. She had thought she could control it. She had thought she could use it for a few months and walk away. But that was never how it worked. The power had controlled her. The greed had controlled her. She had become a monster without even realizing it.